I think that we can get stuck in the problems in the old approach because we're not willing to disrupt that pattern and then create or connect to or really innovate new sustainable solutions at the table. So innovation is extremely important to me because the world's your oyster. It's so much fun. And that means then I don't have to live in this world that's so full of problems and all that. I can actually live in a world that's full of solutions. And that's kind of exciting, not just for me, but the generations to come.
Hello, and welcome to Uncovered, the podcast with your host, Jason Irving. Join me in a journey to understand what's truly happening in your world and the world around you. This is not about how you're living life on the surface. It's about what's truly driving you from under the covers. I'm going to take you on a journey to deeply uncover the reason why you are here, the ultimate purpose in your problems, and the way that they have shaped your life up until now. See, I believe you have a purpose, and your problems are the highway towards ultimate realization of that journey towards freedom and the reconnection of your true self. I've been told I have a different spin on most things, and I'll be giving you my understanding of life, love, and what we're all here for, purpose. To get the best out of this podcast, drop what you already know so you can discover what's beyond you. So join me, let's play this game of life and bring on liberation, transformation, and change. Let's do this. Okay, guys, welcome to Uncovered. I'm super excited. I've got this amazing woman that I have met probably, I think, around 2018 or so. Made me cry in front of a whole group of people. That was the first start of getting to know an absolutely powerful, amazing human being. Kiri-Maree, welcome to Uncovered. Thanks for jumping on with me today.
Oh, it's so good. Can't wait. And why do you always have to tell everyone the moment we meet about the fact that I brought you to tears? We've got to connect first. People might get too scared.
No, I love it because you, when you bring someone to me like me to tears, you actually brought me into connection, right? And I think this is really important because a lot of, like, I love tears. I'm okay with tears and I'm a man, which is not normal. Right.
I like that.
So what you did with me is you actually brought me into a sense of, hey, you called me out, you said what was really going on, and I went into that part of me and I felt really safe because you were saying what was really going on rather than what was the elephant in the room. And this is what I really love about you, Kiri-Maree, is that you're real. You don't want to have conversations that are surface-based. You want to have real conversations. So tell me about Kiri-Maree. What is it that makes you tick? And what makes you, give me a little bit of a background flavor. Let's go back a little bit about, where you were before the powerhouse came in to play.
Before the powerhouse came in. That's an interesting question because I think there's a lot to be said around the fact that I think life in itself is a journey, and the journey has helped me get where I am today. And I think that for many that know me in my world now, it would be really quite a surprise in a lot of ways to realize that I didn't come from, a world that had lots of access to resources, tools, or people supporting me going, you're amazing, you've got this. I really came from a background where, I thought really differently to everyone. So I was strange, or I didn't fit in, or, there were those moments in life where I went through many rough patches, and in a place where people said you'll never amount to anything. So in a lot of cases, that would have meant that, and lots of people I know chose not to make that a thing to platform to spring out from and go, I don't want that for the rest of my life. But for me, it was like I literally got to points in my life where it was life or death. And I had to choose, was I going to define my life by the way that I was brought up, but define my life by the circumstances I found myself in? Or was there something better for me and what I'm meant to bring to this world? And I'm so glad I did that. But boy, it's been such a journey. And I think I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't have gone through those moments, if I hadn't gone through those tough things and learned different ways to be able to not just go through it and cope with it, but thrive and come out with learning things on the way, and then using that to sort of go to my next level.
So tell us, Kiri-Maree, what is it about you? There's a lot of people that listen to that noise. I was told the same thing. University, I wouldn't get through. I wouldn't be a good employee. I wouldn't be able to do this. I wouldn't be able to do that. What is it inside of you that actually says, well, I'm going to prove that wrong? What makes you tick that you didn't listen to that air?
I think that there was a time that I would have said to you, I want to prove that wrong. But I think in a lot of ways, way beyond that, I got a focus that was way beyond me. I got a focus with drivers that drove me beyond where I have my limitations and beyond my excuses and, hey, I shouldn't do that, so I better not do that. Or you can't do that. Oh, that's right, I can't do it, so I better not do it. And it got to a point where I could choose to do that, or what am I meant to be doing here on earth? And is that bigger and a bigger purpose beyond me? And reality was, yes, it is. And because of that, I had to learn ways I could, I was in the fitness industry for quite a while, and I've still got a fascination with it because I believe, as an ecosystem, we should really be as fit and healthy as we can so that we can, play at a much bigger level. So I've still got this fascination with it. But one of the things that I learned from being in the fitness industry for quite a few years is the fact that when we work a muscle, that muscle works to capacity, and you can stretch it to beyond what you think to the next level. And I think that that's the same when we don't work the muscle, that doesn't get exercised, and you can't do things that you could do if you kept working at it and working towards something. And I think that's what we're like, right? Like, I could just do what everyone else said, say, and sit with that. But if I'm to play at a big level and do what I'm meant to do in life, then I better use that to exercise. And I talk about the muscle of human intelligence all the time. So, that's part of building different pieces of that so that I can now, play at a different level. And I don't know, it's funny when I get asked that question, because I go, what is it that's got me there? But it's pieces along the journey, and it's these crossroads where I could go one way or the other, or you've got three choices to make. I always go, the way I'm building out my company is, it's like choose your own pathway, right? Do you remember those books where you choose your own pathway?
No.
And okay, so there were these books, and as a teenager, I loved reading them because I literally could get to the front page, and it says, choose your own, if you want to go this way, go this page. If you want to go that one, you go that. And I feel like that's what life's like. We've got these choices where we can choose our own pathway. And I don't know about you, but I didn't like the pathway I was going down. I would have been a statistic. I would have literally, very different to my life now.
Yeah, and I think this is really, really important. How do we choose our own pathway? Because a lot of people, Kiri-Maree, they don't feel like they have a choice to choose that pathway, that the life is chosen for them, and they don't believe that they have the power and the strength to actually create the pathway that they want. So what is it that allowed you to actually make a decision that you could choose your own pathway and make it happen with your own choices?
Yeah, but I think that goes back to what I said before, which was there were life and death moments.
Can you tell us about
literally?
What
Yeah, of course. So at 16, I was dying of anorexia. I had a life or death choice.
Wow.
Literally. And I could choose to, so I was on every day I'd be called into the hospital and I'd have to go for my treatment, and I'd pretend to take my medicine and do all the things they tell you to do. And then I'd go back out again. And I say it with a smile because there was so much of what I was doing then that I go, you know, you can pretend, you can fudge your way through things, but eventually it all comes to pass. And I was on that moment where they said, you have to come in, you're dying, we need you to die here, basically is what they said. And I knew at that moment, I had a phobia of hospitals. I'd gone in and out of abuse as a young kid. And one of the abusers was a guy who was in the hospital a lot. So there was a lot of trauma through that. And I remember that moment when they said, you have to come in, because my parents couldn't look after me anymore as well and weren't willing to bring me in and out as well. And there was just no hope for me, basically. And I remember that moment that I had a choice. Was this what my life was worth? So all those years that I had gone through things that I shouldn't have gone through, had to work through, really didn't work through, which is why I ended up where I did at 16. And at that moment, it was like, was that all worth it? Reality was, if I died that moment, I should have just died younger and not gone through all that, right? Like, so what's the purpose? So if I felt that there was something beyond me, then maybe this is not a good option, me going into the hospital and thinking that this is the end. And so I knew my last option was, if this isn't it, then what is it? And so I began a journey right from that day onwards to go, okay, I've got a bigger purpose. I always knew that if I hadn't have died in my years younger from all the situations that I'd been in, then I must be here for a reason, and I must be here to do something to bring what I'm meant to have learned through my journey to make a difference. And so I began that journey from 16 on, really, where I was like, I'm here not just for me. And I tell you, that was seriously, Jason, that was a life-saving concept that I held through my whole life, my whole journey. So anytime I came up through hard times, it was like, hey, it's not an option to give up. It's not an option to take the easy route out. It's not an option to go down the pathway that everyone else has trod, because that's not what I'm called to do. And that has served me well in a journey that is in some ways not been like easy, because when you're pioneering, when you're doing things that, you know, I get to do nowadays, it's not the easy pathway. No. But I tell you, there's some amazing things along it. And I tell you that I'm so grateful that I get to do it. But I'm also actually really grateful, although I'd never want to repeat those years again, I'm grateful for the lessons I've learned from them, and the resilience, and the way to always have perspective, I guess, is one of the things that I'm really grateful for, because I know what it was like to hurt. I know what it's like to have pain. And I think, going back to your question, it's really easy to stay in what you know, even if it's painful. Yeah. It wasn't easy for me to stay in my pain. It hurt too much. I didn't want to be there. And I wanted to know, how can I get out from that and then actually do what I'm meant to do? And so it's kind of been a life journey to get to where I am now.
Listen, I'm really inspired. I'll tell you why. When you're talking, I love looking at how people communicate about their past, and you have this gorgeous kid-like smile on your face going, and all this shit happened, and the smile is there because it's not owning you, it's not destroying you, it's actually part of the appreciation process of getting there. And what I'm hearing is, for Kiri-Maree, you tell me if I'm wrong, growth is not an option, it's a must. It's like you have to grow. And the next level, I when I look at you as a person, I don't think there's any, like, your staircase is not going to end. I can't see a staircase ending for you. I don't think you have too much ability to actually do sustainability on that staircase. So you just, like, you've got there.
It's a sustainable climb is how I see it.
That's it. It's a constant climbing. And I think this is important, listeners, that if you look at people like Kiri-Maree, and we'll go into what you're doing and the impact that you're making in a little bit, the option is actually growth. And that's what you got to think about. And it's not easy. Like, I do stuff that nobody does in this world. Everything that I do is complete opposite to the coaching industry. Everything that the way I focus. And I know I don't look and I think I don't have necessarily the strength to be able to do it. I have to, though. It's like not an option. And I share and I show stuff that I remember I was on a podcast with one dude, and we chatted like this, and he didn't put my podcast on because I told him some stuff, and he looked at me, he went completely white, and he said, "That's the opposite to the coaching industry, Jason." I said, "Yes, and it works fast." So he just couldn't cope with his psychology, that I was blowing his mind's, his circuits were just completely blown. And when you're doing something different, you have to be prepared for a couple of things. Backlash. You have to be prepared for the fact that people aren't going to like what you've got to say either. Would you agree?
Yeah. And I think it's not that they don't like sometimes. I think what they don't understand, they just won't go near.
Yeah.
And so because of that, they won't even come or support or go on that journey with you. And so it can be an extremely isolating and lonely journey. And the other thing is, you've got to know, and you talked about it in that way, but I call it your non-negotiables.
Yeah.
You've got to have non-negotiables. And I've got those. And sometimes that's meant that I've had to stand strong in something that those around me don't get, don't understand, but I'm okay to stand strong. And sometimes they need to catch up with you. And that's a hard journey, holding that space while others need to still catch up. And I've had that happen quite a few times. Particularly, I remember this, she's a global leader. And I remember when she was transitioning from being an amazing leading entrepreneur in her space and to move into the leadership realm. And she kind of had gone into this whole transition time, and I'd gone through it with her. And she had just finished this event, her first event in the leadership space, and really owning her position as a leader is what she was trying to say. And she came up to me afterwards and she said, "Kiri-Maree, I just don't get you. I just don't get you. And you're kind of a freak, and you don't speak out all the time. But when you do, like, I don't even really get what you're about." And I remember I had one of my clients with me that's been a client of mine for years and years and years. And she just said to me afterwards, when we moved away, she said, "I hope you never, ever have anything to do with her again." And I said, No. You've got to understand, she just doesn't understand what I'm about. And I actually told her where she would need to move leadership, because she actually asked me, she said, "Where do you think leadership needs to go?" Funny enough, years, and I said to my client there, I said, no, I'm not going to not be in her world. I said, just watch this space. One day she's going to be going, "Hey, what's it you're about?" and want to come on the journey with me. Sure enough, I literally, probably about 8 months ago, I got to have a conversation with that particular person, interviewed them, called them on it, and said, "Hey, remember that moment when you said, you're a freak and, I don't get you," and all that? And she said to me, and I think this is so interesting and so important to know, when you're willing to step out of doing your norm, is that you will find yourself in places like this. And she goes, I just never understood you because I wasn't there yet. But she said, "I'm getting to understand you now. And because of that, I want to come and I want to know more and I want to come on that journey with you. It's just that you're always further ahead of where we're at. And I wasn't ready to come to that point. And I think when you're willing to pioneer something different, willing to stand for that, you have to be willing to hold space where others haven't been yet or don't even know, and just hold it enough to create curiosity before they even want to, let alone put their toes in, put their whole feet in.
Yeah, I love that. And we're talking about, can you tell me about what are your non-negotiables, Kiri-Maree? What are they for you? What do they look like?
Yeah, so one of them is, disrupting patterns. That has become a fascination of mine for years and years and years. And it's a fascination because if we think of, you asked me my history of where I've come from to where I am now, that's my old story. But you also mentioned how I smile and things like that, and that it doesn't own me. And that's because patterns can disrupt if you choose to change your story, if you choose a new approach to how you do things.
Yeah.
So for me, one of my non-negotiables is going, if it's not working for me, if it's not adding value to me or to the human race, then that is not something that I need to continue, and definitely not something that I want to be role modeling within my work and what I do with people across the globe. Collaboration is really important to me. Collaboration is a non-negotiable because although I'm great on my own, I'm way better when I join with other awesome humans, right? Because we can actually really shift the dial forward when we join together. I think, again, this goes back to another non-negotiable is the pioneering side of it and the innovating. I think that we can get stuck in the problems in the old approach because we're not willing to disrupt that pattern and then create or connect to or really innovate new sustainable solutions at the table. So innovation is extremely important to me because the world's your oyster. It's so much fun. And that means then I don't have to live in this world that's so full of problems and all that. I can actually live in a world that's full of solutions. And that's kind of exciting, not just for me, but the generations to come. And I think the last one of the non-negotiables that's an absolute non-negotiable is contribution. It's that we are able to be the best, do the best, and, leave behind footprints that are going to be beneficial, not just to us, but my children, the children's children. I've got grandbabies now. So,
Wow.
it's generations and generations. And, if we leave it the way the world is at this moment, then I think that's kind of a sad place. So a non-negotiable is to, go, how can I myself, do the best of leaving behind the footprints that I really want the generations to be able to springboard from, and how can I help others to realize that this is important in the way they build out culture. So yeah, that kind of some of my non-negotiables.
I love that. I remember I was on a call, you were on a live, and I sort of jumped on, and a couple of you guys, your son was talking as well. Around planning, and I put a post there. We need a 100-year plan, and one person sort of laughed, and I was dead serious because I was thinking about creating a plan that's actually built upon the generational style of things, that you're doing something that is actually beyond you, that drops your ego, and what I'm hearing right now is actually what you're writing there. Well, what I've written down on my little phone, just taking notes here, is exactly that very thing.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really believe in is future analysis. And what I mean by that is going as far out as you can to go, if nothing was stopping you, what would you do? Who would you be? How would that look? And I think if you just go right to the moment before, like someone's at your funeral talking about you, or the moment that you've got your last breath, what would have it been that you would have stood for or wanted to do, or those things? Like, I want us to think as far out as that, right? In making sure that every day we're designing what we're meant to be doing, not just then, but actually now, and moving towards that. Like, so I love to think really big and in the future, and to analyze a whole lot of things that most people go, oh, I'm just trying to cope with this bit here right now.
Yeah, I love it, because would you agree that you're just a natural visionary? You're like a massive visionary in the way that you think. Like, there's not very many people who think well beyond their toes. So
yeah,
when you've got that,
I would say you're pretty onto that when you say that. But I'd also say this: I'm a massive visionary. It's the creative side of me, it's the innovative side of me. But I'm actually the other side of me as well. I'm a majorly data-driven, analytical, strategic. And that's kind of my genius zone, as I play on both sides of the brain. So I can go right out as far as you want to, play big vision, and then come right back to your starting point and go, okay, great. Now this is what we've got to start with. This is where we want to go. Let's play. Let's get this working so we can build it out. I thought everyone thought like that. What I realized, I know that sounds crazy now, because I realized, I know, but for me, that's just how I don't know if you know mind maps, right? Like the whole mind map concept. Yeah. Well, my brain thinks like a mind map all the time, right? So I might be asking you questions, and this other thing's happening here, and this is happening over here. And you go, why is she asking me a question about this? But I'm actually literally going, this is what he asked in that moment. But what he needs to think about is this. He's probably not thought about that. And where's that piece about this? And I stick it all together, and then I see a pattern of how that outcome can work and build a pathway. That's how my brain works all the time. And I thought that was normal. I really, really seriously did. And realized that most people think very visionary. Most people think, like as in they'll think one of these things, logical, or they might think strategic. How do we get from here to here? Or they are really data driven, or they're really logical. Now, what I realized was I can put all those things together and you get me. So, and I now know that's not normal.
No, that is so not normal, Kiri-Maree. There's a compass that you can look at that it's like got 8 types of people.
Okay.
And basically, it's sort of you're sort of explaining the fact that you can actually use the whole compass really, really well, and that's just not normal. Right. So that
okay. So like I said, I wasn't known as normal, and I'm still not normal. Yeah. But the amazing thing about my past of me not being normal was that I realized my normal has become my genius zone. Yeah. Right. And, it is good that others don't think like me, because that's what I bring to the table.
So I've got a question for you. Now that you know, how do you handle people who only have that one facet? Like, you're looking at, you're going, okay, here's me, and you go and have a talk. It's actually
a really good question.
They go unbalanced the moment you're saying, hey, what about some data around that? And they're just going, oh my fucking God, what the heck are you saying? I've just told about this massive picture, and you're going data, how are we going to get there? And they've just lost their fucking marbles. They've lost their shit because you can go anywhere you like. How do you how do you handle that, and how do people handle you in regard to that as well?
Yeah, and I think that's such a good question, because how do I handle it? I've learned strategies, and I think I often tell a lot of people in my world, I go, I don't just do this as a cool strategy. I do this because it's a hack. It's means anything that can shorten my time to do anything. The more effective I can be, the greater I can play. Okay, so things like that I do, and I go, some of the things that I've done in life isn't because I'm trying to be cool, isn't because I'm trying to be the next, this piece or that piece. It's just that if we want to be more effective, it's like going back to the gym. If you want to know how your body is functioning, you've got to learn how your body is functioning. You've got to learn those little pieces. And if I don't know it, I go find someone that knows it. And that puts that little piece back in the puzzle.
Yeah.
My whole life is like that. That's why I think we should be building out ecosystems, not businesses, companies, or organizations, right? Because we make, whether, like, if we're not feeling well, if we haven't had a good sleep, if we're not on the productivity in which we bring to our business or organization. So, that's an important piece. Same in the same way. If I'm not understanding because I don't have the knowledge, then I'm going to sit at that table and have nothing to say. But I want to bring the best value from the knowledge that I have to the knowledge that is needed at that table. I better find out what I need to know. And if I don't know it, where do I find out to find it? Yeah. So I have learned ways to connect what I know to what you know, and then be able to have an everyday conversation and take it to where I need to go. That has really helped me. So strategies has been a really important thing, not just in how I communicate, but in being able to communicate and give you the space to be able to communicate with me as well. That has all been very much a learning curve. I've not always been good at that. I've not always been good at being able to give the space for others to be able to be good at it, to explain from what they need, where they're at, and be able to join and connect that. It has been really hard work because, no, it has. I'm dyslexic. I don't think like other people. I don't learn like anyone else. So imagine that in the schoolyard. That was not the best, side of it. I worked really hard to get good marks at school, not because I had to do it for anyone else, but because I didn't want to look dumb. I felt dumb. Everyone told me I was dumb. So for a long time in my life, I didn't feel smart. I didn't know that I had a good brain. I just knew that my brain was different. Yeah.
So you were diagnosed as dyslexic. Is that what I'm hearing?
So I was on the generation where you didn't know all those things. Okay. It's been a latter thing as I've got older. And I even spoke with dyslexia. In other words, I'm the world's worst speller. I don't know if you remember, but I did a disclaimer of that when we did our patterns, because I can't spell. I literally can't. And I'm okay with that. I'm so grateful for the computers these days with spell check. But I literally can't spell. So that was one of the things that when you're dyslexic, I get letters around the wrong way. I spell the with T-E-H, when I'm doing it really fast. I know how to spell it. I know how to spell that, but when your brain is moving as fast as mine, sometimes you have to learn ways. So I've learned strategies to be able to, spell really big words when I have to be able to, be me and be okay with that. I've learned ways to then help others to understand what I'm talking about. So, one of the biggest things that I talk about these days, and again, it's another non-negotiable, is about humanity as stakeholders, meaning that if, humanity meaning as simple as you and I. See, here's a big word that in lots of space, people go, oh, humanity is so big. No, it's as simple as you and I. Stakeholders meaning the measure of value. Oh, okay. So what if every one of us, when we're making decisions, we look through the global lens of humanity as stakeholders, you and I, the measurement of value, whatever that is. And for me, every time we made a decision, we wanted to add value to the human race, not take away. So all of a sudden, a really big concept, I'm now bringing it back to, wow, every one of us could do that. You could, when you're building out your business. How's that adding value to the human race? Every decision you're making. Would that make some difference? Actually, it would. And so that's what I guess I've learned, ways to think really, really big, often ways in which people go, I'll get there one day. Well, that one day never comes, right? Because we're always so busy in the now. And go, what if you could just do little things now that could change the big thing? And so it's definitely been a learning ground, not just for me, but for me to be able to communicate what I have to share with the world and to add value with the world.
So you've made something so big, so simple and elegantly placed. Like, I'm just going to call you out right now, Kiri-Maree. You have absolutely the most elegant communication skills. I don't see.
Thank you.
I think that's an old story. I really don't.
No, but what I was saying with that was I wasn't good at that.
Yeah.
I am good at it
You
now.
are so brilliant.
Because I have worked very, 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 and I mean very hard to be able to do that. And so when you asked me that question, there was a lot of times many didn't understand me. Many didn't get me. And like I said, it was a lot of time of having to believe that this is what I'm meant to be doing, even if others can't see it. So holding a vision that many didn't get, and even in myself, there was a lot of the vision I didn't see, the full vision, because I wouldn't have coped with it. But now I love it. I'm excited. And boy, do I play big now.
Yeah, and that's amazing to actually have that, you know, bring something big, make it something small. I talk about this all the time. When you're doing things, when you're really proud of yourself, when you're doing stuff when no one's looking, is actually what makes the biggest impact, in my opinion. Because if you can be proud of, you know, the steps you take when you're not on stage, you're doing things that are kind, and you're making yourself better every single day. You know, I've had in the last 5 months, Kiri-Maree, I had 4 people say I'm the closest they'll ever come to someone who walks like Jesus. And I sat there and just went, oh my God, like they're looking at the way I act, the way I act as a male, the dedication I have, the honesty and the care. And I sat there and just went, God, I've got to step up. You know, I think about that as someone saying something like that to me, and I just go, wow, I've got to get better at this, you know, and think about what that is. And if we are all doing this, we're making a massive contribution to become better every single day, no matter what, whether it's playing in the big space like you do, Kiri-Maree, and whether you're playing in that small space where you're going to the shops and someone needs some help and you offer that help because you're there.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so important that we always are willing to keep evolving. I think the worst thing you can do is not want to grow and just stay stagnant or status quo. Like, that is a sad day if all the human race decided that. And I get excited the fact that where I lack now, that doesn't need to be my truth going forward. And I'm at a stage, and like even with my kids, I'm always going, okay, what is it I want to work on now? Like, only because I just really love looking for my pieces that are not my strengths and strengthening that piece. And again, I think it goes back to my fitness years, because it was like, okay, I need to work my biceps a little more because they're not holding up when I'm trying to do curls, or, oh, I need to work my calves because, you know, they need to be stronger to do, you know, maintain the leg presses that I wanted to do. So it's the same concept, right? Like, it's, what is it that I can work on now that will be more beneficial to where I want to go next? And I love that. I love the fact that I get to do it, and I get excited. It's like adventures, literally, and go, oh, what can I do next to learn from? That keeps me pumped and full of life and the freshness, because every time I learn, I get to teach from that. I get to role model from that. So it's kind of fun.
I love it. Now, I've got a question for you, Kiri-Maree.
Of course you do.
Of course I do. My question about what you do, you talk about this quite a bit. leadership space and sitting at the table. Can you tell me what that actually means?
Yeah, it's interesting because this past week I've been at some pretty interesting tables. And one of them was at a table in an advisory role for galactic space. So basically building out economy with entrepreneurs and building out a distillery up in space. And so and you go, what the heck are you doing on there? Well, in my case, my role there is, how is this going to impact the human race going forward? And how are we going to make sure it's beneficial, not taking away from the human race? And, then another one I was on this week was, I did a 3-hour facilitation and training for a new project with Virgin Unite, a quarter diversity program that they're putting on in 2023. So here's the thing that's interesting about both of those projects right now is I don't agree with everything that is being said at that table. But one of the things that I love a lot of what's being said at those tables, don't get me wrong. But if I don't even have a seat at that table, if I'm not a part of that conversation, I don't have the right to have input in there. I don't even get space to be heard, let alone have a voice. And so when I talk about being at the table, creating that space to be at the table, to be part of that conversation, that's because I get to have conversations that create awareness, and then hopefully, whoever's at that table can then take ownership of what they've taken from that conversation. And I think that's what it means by, being at that table. I get to now be at tables where we are looking at big decisions that affect not just whatever that project is or initiative is or company is at, but it's really about what is the building blocks to really culture going forward as well. And so again, if I'm not at those tables, how can I be a part of what I want to leave behind for the generations to come?
So when you're at these tables, Kiri-Maree, what goes on when you're opening a doorway that says, how can it be better for the human race? How does that get handled on these tables? Do people handle it well, or do they just...
Oh, they love it.
Yeah, they're okay. Yeah.
No. So it depends what table you're at, right? And I don't always, sometimes it's bringing out even more of the good stuff, more of the things. Like it's looking at the patterns and going, what has worked in the past? Have you thought about this? Would this be even more effective if you did this or chose this or made this decision, right? So sometimes it's the real positive side. So, and I think that's important too, because when we're having these conversations, we often can feel that if we're going to have a conversation and have to go down this pathway, it's all going to be too hard and it's all tricky and uncomfortable. It's not always. And in fact, most of the time it's not. But I think that there's a spot in life right now that if we are going to do it different, not keep doing the old approach, but bring on the new approach to whatever that can look like, we have to disrupt patterns. We have to do it differently. And if we look at one of the patterns of the past, when we've been at tables that make decisions, it has been the same looking people, the same sounding people, the same kind of ways that we've done things. And if that's the case, then we're going to only get the same results. So we have to do it differently. So a lot of the tables I'm finding myself at the moment is at tables where we are literally wouldn't have been at the same table before. And how do you do those conversations? How does that look? Well, I get to facilitate and navigate some of those conversations, because even if and I think this is really important, Jason, even if we disagree with everything else, what if we could just agree with one thing, and find that common ground of what that could be, and move and shift that dial forward. Would that change where we're at across the globe? And reality is, yes, it would. So that's not always fun. And it's not, and so sometimes it's about listening and hearing everyone at the room and going, okay, out of all of this, what's the one thing we do agree on? And how can we work on that to move this forward? And so it's about getting different distinctions at the table, but it's also then being able to navigate that conversation. I get to do a lot of that.
I love that. I've got another question for you, love.
Of course.
As a female, how many women are at these tables? Are you finding that there's more or there's less? What's it look like?
At one of those groups, there was absolutely no other female. And on the other one, there was one other female.
And how are you finding as a woman, is it easy to get your voice across? To what happens in this picture? Because it is very different being a female in a group of all majority men. How does it work for you as a
you know what's so interesting about this conversation is, so going back to my background, for many, many years, I was the young girl who they would call me a tomboy, right? I don't even know if they use that anymore. It's probably not kosher. But I was always, I know. So, but I say everything. And then, if you won't have a problem with it, just come and talk to me, and you'll realize that I'm not meaning it in that way, but I'm meaning it in this way. And, in the case of that was, I just loved hanging out with the guys. They didn't have fluff. They didn't worry about dramas. They just had, and I love the physical. So they were just out there playing sport, having fun, climbing trees, playing in the sandpit. I don't really care. I was that one that just did that. I got dolls and chopped their heads off, read into that, whatever you want to. It's funny. I love the human race, and I'm such an advocate for the human race, so who knows what that was all about? Maybe, someone can define that and tell me, but at that time, I loved it. And I didn't want to be a guy. I didn't want to be a male. I just liked hanging out with the males. I liked how they thought. I liked what they were able to do, what they were allowed to be up to, all that sort of thing. And then I kind of went into my early 20s. And all of this is important because it's been kind of a journey for me. I wanted to be feminine. I didn't want to be this woman that everyone thought was very masculine. I would hear that all the time. Oh, you're very decisive and you're very direct. Here was the thing that I wanted to be. I wanted to be a strong female. I wanted to be able to add my value to the table. I wanted to be known for my smartness. And I wanted to be also known for the fact that I'm female and feminine. I didn't have other role models to look at. And so I had to find out what that was and what I was going to be happy to bring that to the table. And so I had to learn that first and be confident in that before I could be at the tables where there is a lot of power play. And some tables there's ego. In some tables there's, do you not know who I am? And then when I got through those tables and the tables that I get to be at, the majority of them, it's none of that. It's like tables where, although this is kind of females haven't been here, or even females of color or females of, different backgrounds, we are really accepting of you. We want you to come to this table. And I learned that I had just as much right to be at that table as they did. And it wasn't one was better or the other. I felt really comfortable there. What has been interesting is that I can tell you at those tables, I'm really comfortable with a room full of males in there. What I'm not comfortable is when the males still play this very tight little club.
Yeah, okay.
Right? That is not fun. And the other thing I'm not really comfortable with is when females back chat each other, don't support each other in there, because that's really common too. What I love is when we can collaborate together and realize every single person at that table has value to add. And that is when I get excited, and I love being at those tables, and it's not an issue at all. But there's not enough people doing that. There's not enough people of different distinctions at those tables. And that is what's still very, very hard, because, you know, again, it can be lonely, because there's some things that females go through that other males just don't relate to. And same with the males. Like, sometimes I don't like being in that conversation all the time, because, like, in most cases, I actually really enjoy it. Let's get real. But there's, you know, that joking side of it where they, you know, go down those pathways that maybe just aren't my jokes. I don't really enjoy being at tables like that. It's kind of boring. I don't, you know, and so I love the fact when it's really different. But I've struggled with it because I'm a strong female in there. And I think there's more that are willing to be strong females now. Yeah. And that being strong doesn't mean you have to be the loudest. So, you know, going back to that woman who challenged me and said, you're a bit of a freak and you don't speak up. I speak up, and I speak up real good when I know there's space for it, and I know there's value I can add that's going to be listened to, right? I am not going to add to the noise. There's enough noise out there. And I think that's the difference, is that it's less about the gender side of it. I don't like, if we're not careful, it's going to go too far either way of anything. Yeah. And that is not what we need either. And so that's where I go back to non-negotiable collaboration. That's what it's about.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think this is really, really important, because listeners, the women have got to let go of this whole thing is that we're not being supported. Look at you where you are. Yeah. The men have got to let go of the ego and all this thing. You know, strength is actually strength. That's all it is. It's not a male or a female thing. It's something that you can hold and own. And correct. I think what you're talking about here, you tell me if I'm wrong, is about actually getting collaboration of people and letting go of the penis and the vagina. And getting rid of this whole bullshit that we do, and saying we're here to actually make a difference, and let's figure out how to do it in our unique ways. We all have different ways of approaching. It's not about this black, white, male, female, left, right, because we're just going to keep creating division. Would you agree?
Correct. And here's the thing I always say is that we need to come to the table knowing we are human first. And what does that mean for me? Human first means that we belong to the human race. And that's number one. And we bring our distinctions to the table. So I don't talk about diversity, I think. And when we communicate around diversity, we think of a negative connotation. And so, like, if I'm diverse, that means I'm different. And different has not always been a good thing. So but I do bring my distinctions to the table. In other words, there are differences that I have to add value to the table. But that's a distinction that I have. That's a good thing. And you don't have that, but you could learn from it. Just as I don't have all the ones that you know and bring to the table, and I could learn from that. So then we can keep evolving. And I think that's what we need to do, is bring our different distinctions, human first. Okay, so if we're human first, what is our goal? Our goal is to add value to the human race going forward, not take away. Okay, great. So is having talks around some of that, the things that we are brought to our attention today in this world, going to be beneficial in this conversation going forward? Maybe it's something we could learn from it so we don't do that mistake again. Maybe it's something we could gain knowledge from so that we can put that into what we need to do going forward. But what is going to be beneficial to shift that dial forward so that we do leave those footprints that are beneficial for the generations to come? And, you know, some of these things we get lost down in the drama and the fluff and all the noise that the world keeps trying to get us to join. And I think sometimes it's just better if we go, okay, so as a human race, what are we going to add value to going forward today?
This is what I was going to ask you. What is a simple thing? But you've actually already explained it. Right? It's just
so going into simple. One of the things that, and this is what I'm building out in all I'm doing. So I've done all my work and things and different things that people can join and be a part of. But the one thing that I was not owning, even in my space, was this thing that I'm officially launching in November. But I really think it's as simple as this, and this is why I like talking about it right now. And that is the 1% movement, right? And for me, it's like, what if Jason does his 1%? Whatever that's meant to be. What's in your hand? What are you meant to do? How are you meant to use that? And how will we know that you're doing that, right? That's your 1% shift. I do my 1%, whatever that is. And in my case, it's like, what if I could get more and more people who are making decisions that are going to add value to the human race and build culture out like that, right? Like that's the whole thing. If I can do that, then I'm going to be doing my 1% shift, right? And in my case, I want 1 billion people doing their 1% shifts. And imagine that by 2052, if 1 billion were doing their 1% shifts, that would be 1/10 of what they're saying is going to be the population on Earth. That would actually shift the dial forward, right? And change culture and how we're doing culture. Okay, cool. So if Mary does her 1%, George does his 1%, Jason does his, Kiri-Maree does hers, and we keep doing our 1%, would that shift the dial forward?
No, of course
Reality is,
yeah,
of course.
and this is
right?
where it changes.
And that's as simple as it can be.
I love this. And listeners, this is really, really important, is that Kiri-Maree is giving you an opportunity. What she's saying is get up every day, be the best human you can be, and create a 1% shift. Whatever that 1% shift is, keep breathing until you are willing to make that 1% shift. And then if we can all do this individually, and this comes down to it, as it says, you and me. And then we get to connect and we can start creating that movement of that little dial. It makes us not small. It makes us a cog in the wheel.
Well, let's just think about it this way. Big concept again. So just bear with me. Us individual. So you and I, if we do our 1%, right? Okay, great. Then as a collective, so you use that in your community, your platform that you've got, your sphere of influence, great. Then that's going to change that. And then guess what? Individual, collective, global. We make up the global space. And so that will change and narrow that gap from problem to solution that we're seeing across the globe in many, many situations, right? Big concept, right back to you and I.
That's it. And this is what's called the domino effect, guys. So if you're willing to take some inspiration from Kiri-Maree, I am hoping that people have had a really, really good think and listen to this podcast and really listen to your wisdom. It's so nice to actually hear your passion. Like, you've got a voice like has so much strength that just pounds out of it. It's like a wind tunnel. It's so awesome to actually feel your voice. I can feel you blowing me over, right? That's how strong your voice is. And it's great because it blows me away. Like, I'm going to just give you a little bit of feedback from Sensitive Jay, right? Pretty much the whole of my body my hairs have been standing on end since you've been talking, because it's not, it makes sense. It's not hard. It's actually quite simple what Kiri-Maree is asking us to do. It's not hard. What we do is our brains make it hard. You're making things simple and you're making it easy. And my hands have been, everything's been standing on hand. My whole body's been tingling all the way up and down my spine, just hearing your voice and just knowing the fact that you're in positions where you have the ability to enhance human nature and be in places which are required right now for people to actually make an impact and change. I'm really gracious, and thank you for saying yes to being on the Uncovered podcast today, we're going to share all of Kiri-Maree's show notes where you can find her to get an opportunity to experience what she does. I'd love it if you could like and share this particular podcast, because this is Humanitarian 101. This woman owns humanity, and she has the most the biggest heart, the most gorgeous way about her, and power and strength, anger and velocity. You have everything at your disposal. So thank you so much for jumping on with me today. I really appreciate you and your time.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate your time, because time is so valuable. What we'd love you guys to do, if you like this podcast, if you could share it with your friends, and also our website address for the podcast is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademypodcast.com. Our website is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademy.com. We have a free Facebook group called Wellness Leadership Evolution, so search for that. I'd love it if you could add me as a friend on Facebook. I don't buy it, so add me as a friend. And if you want some help and you would really like some support from us in the Academy, jump in. We have a process. You can do a break-in call to connect in with us. We do small courses. We have lots of things that we share. So we'd love the opportunity to give you a chance to change your life and turn it into a free one. You are one transformation away from change. Come and catch up.